So the continuing and big story coming out of Jamaica's World Cup qualification has been the possible recommendation for the removal of head coach Theodore Whitmore by the technical committee of the JFF. And in hindsight, as a general fan, looking at it, you know, without the knowledge that I have, I think, and just using it in terms of the layman generally who wouldn't have my knowledge, just looking at it, they would think that the powers that be are doing their best for the development of football in this country. But if you know what I know, you realize that there's a lot of politics in this country. Showing a lot of things, but especially football. And I do business across the world with big clubs, small clubs, clubs all across the world, United States, Europe, etc. But when it comes to Jamaica, it's a unique situation in terms of how they deal with football. And the politics has killed or continues to kill the game here. And it's something I've grappled with based on the fact that in order for my business to grow to the extent that I want, I would want to see some changes locally in terms of football in Jamaica. But I have my ways around that in terms of doing my deals internationally. But I'll go on to say, I think the layman who support football would think that these people have the general interest of football at hand. And when you look on the face of it, that you have a committee that's made up of certain persons in the JFF, and they have now recommended, well, allegedly, because these are news reports, it hasn't been confirmed. Um, it has been recommended for by them for the dismissal of Theodore Whitmore. And let me say this: I think at this point, for them to want to dismiss Whitmore, I think that's the wrong decision overall. If you wanted to do that, you probably should have done that when the campaign there were some real issues at the start of the campaign in terms of us getting points. I think for the last few games he has somewhat steadied the ship, although we're out of the run. It's technically out of the run in terms of qualifying. So I personally would not make a change at this point. I would allow him to finish off and then try to move on and rebuild. But when I look at the decision, I think there's a deeper thing underlying the JFF, and I've looked at it and I know it as a fact that there's a huge split in the JFF. I think, and it has and the reason why I know these things because of my dealings with the JFF for years and knowing who called the shots on the barrel and knowing who still call the shots under under this new president, Mr. Mike Ricketts. And I think that fundamentally where there's still a fight for power between the old JFF guard that still has influence in regards to everything that goes on because the majority of the people that were had before were probably had by them. And so if they need a decision to go a particular way or something done, they can call them and they can influence that decision to go a particular way. So it's very here in Skerm specifically in terms of people wanting to do what they want to do for their own personal interest and not for football. And I think this new administration is trying, but I think they have to clean house. That's the only way to fix these things because it has popped up in so many other ways, apart from World Cup qualification and them actually recommending to fire a coach. Because I think these decisions are being made by one person, and that's the honest truth. And then when those decisions are made, you know, people just abide by it. So I don't think there has been much reform in the JFF. I still think like the old guy at the JFF still has enormous influence on the current administration, and and until they're able to somehow sweep and get rid of this influence, it will continue. Because it's the same system they've been using for years where they go get English based players. It's the same agent they've been using in England. It's the same setup. So think about it. If they've been using the same setup from 1998, who was in charge of that setup, even under Burrell? We need to make it clear. So there would be somebody else other than the president currently that would have some level of power within this organization to influence certain things, although they're not officially there. And I think that's one of the main things stopping the JFF from moving forward and stopping overall the development of football in this country. Because time has run out on these administrators, where they're still in certain positions um, in CONCACAF, and they have continued to influence football in a very wrong way in this country. Um, the football in this country is not for everybody. It's for those people in their pockets, and it has happened consistently since '98, and it hasn't changed. The JFF is not run like a football administration. It's run like a club. So, yeah. So, and that's the concept they have in their head. And even so, they don't have the expertise to run it like that, but they try. Um, so these things need to change where it can't be about what has happened in football over the past how many years is that you have two clubs that have influenced the movement of players out of the country. That can't continue. There's a third club that have gotten involved recently, for example, Cavalier. But even so, um, there needs to be something else to move the product forward. And until these guys recognize that and build out every club, all 12 clubs within the country, to have those capabilities, we'll still have these issues. And that's where we need to go and try to remove overall influence from the past administration on this administration. But it's still going to be a hard sell because, let me put it this way, majority of this new administration worked under the past administration. So, yeah, I don't know how it will be done, but, that would be, I would think the best way for that would be from the president of the JFF. That's my 2 cents.